On April the 25th, 2016, the government of Saudi Arabia announced Vision 2030, a massive series of megaprojects that positioned the country at the center of global development, and this channel for getting some really good-ass views. The list of projects includes unbelievably ambitious engineering ideas. There's The Line, which we have farmed some views on, a multi-million resident linear city built from scratch, Jeddah Tower, the soon-to-be tallest structure in the world that will pierce the skies, literally. Whoever wrote this, I don't think it's not what literally means. The sky can't be pierced. And expansive energy plants planned to supply half the country with green energy. All of these projects require terraforming on a scale never before seen in human history, while simultaneously pushing the boundaries of engineering and development as we know it. Although formally designed to diversify the economy and culture, the not-so-secret intention of Vision 2030 is to present Saudi Arabia as a technologically futuristic giant and improve the perception of the country as a place where people actually want to live. It's a hard place to start, Saudi Arabia. Now, almost 10 years into the project, it's high time we took a proper look at how well it's doing. Headlines have already reported that only some of its elements have been successfully completed or are otherwise on track. The Line. Not on track. Surprise. Meanwhile, the biggest projects have stalled for years, and day after day, that 2030 number looms closer. Will the Saudis finish on time, or will the richest Middle Eastern country end up embarrassing itself in front of the world stage? My money's on the latter. Saudi Vision 2030 is a supercharged development plan aimed at three specific goals: the diversification of the Saudi economy, its social structure, and its cultural landscape. At the heart is a weird way to do three. It's kind of painful. Should do this. At the heart of the issue is the economy. Yet, unlike most countries, Saudi Arabia doesn't face a revenue shortage. In fact, it boasts the 19th highest GDP in the world, making it the top-ranked Middle Eastern country in that regard. The real challenge, however, lies in the country's over-reliance on that black liquid gold. Oil exports contribute to around 40% of the nation's GDP and approximately 75% of its fiscal revenue. Saudi Arabia's position as the world's biggest oil exporter isn't surprising, but the government understands that relying solely on oil is not a smart strategy. Other Middle Eastern countries are following a similar path. For example, Kuwait's Vision 2035 and Qatar's Vision 2030 projects include economic diversification as one of their key objectives. In fact, Saudi Arabia has been working to reduce its dependence on oil since the 1970s. Still making up 75% of your money coming in, huh? In 2016, Vision 2030 was announced, a project so significant that it is overseen by Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister. And ultimate Nepo baby, allegedly. If successfully implemented, this plan would not only diversify Saudi Arabia's economic portfolio, but also have a profound impact on the society and culture of this Middle Eastern giant. The document officially outlines three pillars: to make the country the heart of the Arabic and Islamic worlds, to transform it into a global investment powerhouse, and to position it as a hub connecting Africa and Eurasia. If the plan works out, it would provide the government with alternative sources of revenue, which is, after all, the top priority. It would also reduce the dependency on public spending, as these innovations are expected to create employment opportunities that would instantly boost the private sector. Additionally, there are numerous projects aimed at lowering the country's carbon footprint and improving sustainability, with the main goal being that half of all power generated by 2030 comes from green sources. Some projects are focused on enhancing the country's visibility and introducing its culture to the rest of the world, especially since it remains somewhat abstract to many people. In terms of megaprojects, it is by far the most ambitious project cluster in the Middle East, and nothing more epitomizes this than Neom. And look, we've already covered this artificial city in 2 videos, and you're invited to take a look at those if you want a more detailed breakdown of why the sole idea of Neom is ridiculous. For those just hearing about this for the first time, probably not, but okay. This planned city is located in Tabuk province between the Gulf of Aqaba and the Red Sea. It might go down in history as the greatest megaproject ever, or perhaps as the ultimate case of don't bite off more than you can chew, but more on that later. Spanning an area of 26,500 square kilometers, that's roughly the size of Albania and Massachusetts combined. You're welcome, European and American listeners. This city is projected to cost a whopping $8.8 trillion to build, which is 25 times the annual Saudi national budget. In return, Neom is expected to generate almost 500,000 jobs and add an estimated $48 billion to the country's GDP annually. The most ambitious parts of this project are Sindala Island and, of course, the infamous Line. The Line is a planned linear settlement designed quite literally as a line, a single, honestly, comically long building that measures 170 kilometers. Stretching from the Red Sea to the city of Tabuk, it could theoretically accommodate 9 million inhabitants, a figure that represents a quarter of Saudi Arabia's population at the time of this video's recording. This would result in a population density of 260,000 per square kilometer. That would make it the world's most densely populated city, by far, with a density nearly 6 times greater than that of Manila, currently the most densely populated city in the world. And I'm sure it's lovely living in such a densely populated place. But it's not all bad, though. The city is intended to be entirely powered by renewable energy. If this goal is achieved, it will become the world's largest renewable city. The city itself would also have no need for cars or streets, further limiting carbon emissions. All the services needed for daily life will be no more than a 5-minute walk away, rendering cars unnecessary. And if someone needs to see their friend who also made the terrible decision to buy a spot in the real-life version of the high-rise, they can always use the metro. You might think that arguably the most famous project in Vision 2030 would be the most advanced one, but you would be sorely wrong. Ever since construction of the line began in late 2022, the developers have encountered hurdle after hurdle. Ungodly amounts of soil had to be moved to create space for the line. At one point, the developers were excavating about 1 million cubic meters of earth every week. For perspective, that's the equivalent of moving 400 Olympic swimming pools, filled with water, of course, every single week. If you prefer a more personal comparison, it's like moving soil, which is 15 million times heavier than you. By 2024, barely more than a year after construction began, a reported 90 million cubic meters of soil had been moved, roughly the amount of soil that would weigh 1.35 billion people, about the population of China. All of this illustrates that the project is a massive terraforming job, certainly one of the greatest in human history. As the developers progressed, it became clear that the magnitude of the task far exceeded what was originally anticipated. It was originally planned that the first 5 kilometers of the line, constituting barely 2.9% of its entire planned length, would be completed by 2030, allowing the first inhabitants to move in. However, the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg reported that the project was scaling back amid developmental uncertainty, with only 2.4 kilometers set to be finished by 2030, and the entire line not expected to be completed until 2045. Saudi officials deny these claims, yet it's hard to ignore that many key members of the project are abandoning their roles. At least 2 major architects have left the project due to concerns over ecological and human rights issues. From an ecological perspective, the project would generate a 1.2 gigaton CO2 carbon footprint because of the extensive use of steel, concrete, and glass. Moreover, once completed, the line would serve as a massive barrier to migratory species, and its fully mirrored exterior facade is expected to be particularly harmful to birds. Regarding human rights, Saudi Arabia has a bit of a poor track record when it comes to worker abuse. To make matters worse, at least 20,000 people will be evicted from the few villages that now stand in the path of the line, and these villages will be completely destroyed. Saudi security forces have already killed 1 person who refused to move, and the criminal court sentenced 3 people to death for the same reason. Although it is certainly the preposterous epicenter of Neom, the line isn't the only component of this grotesque megaproject. Another well-known piece of the puzzle is Sindala Island. This luxurious 20-acre island turned out to be no less of an apparent disaster than the line. It was scheduled to officially open in 2021, but was only completed in 2024 at a staggering cost of $4 billion, nearly 3 times the planned budget. This isn't very surprising when you consider that the opening party cost a whopping $45 million. Apparently the shrimp were excellent. What's particularly impressive about Sindala, despite all its drawbacks and issues, is its marina. To accommodate its guests, Sindala offers 85 berths for yachts up to 50 meters, while the buoys outside the harbor can accommodate yachts up to 170 meters. For reference, that's a real big yacht. Additionally, Marriott International and Four Seasons are opening properties on the island. Although everything may seem glorious on the surface, the island is ultimately a disappointment. It was too expensive and too slow to develop. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the de facto ruler of the country and the main sponsor of the project, fired Neom's CEO after visiting the island. Whoops. Aside from these major projects, Neom will also include Oxagon, a floating industrial city designed to focus on manufacturing, industrial research, and development. There's also Trahena, a ski resort. And yes, you heard that correctly, it's a ski resort in Saudi Arabia, and not one of those ones with the weird brushes that really hurt you when you fall over. That just me as a kid. This is the first ever ski destination in the Arabian Peninsula, which will host the Asian Winter Games in 2029. Again, in Saudi Arabia. All of these projects are key components of the Neom Megaproject, yet at this stage, the finish line remains out of reach. Ideally, this utopia would offer its citizens a finely balanced life in a green, clean environment. However, worldwide experts criticize it as a laboratory of false solutions. Saudi Arabia itself is reproached for trying to artificially create a society where none exists, while Neom's costs are paid in human lives and clean air. According to a recent audit, there is clear evidence of deliberate financial manipulation by some project managers. Former managers have even stated that the entire project is completely unrealistic. In fact, the Saudi Arabian prince has a very Back to the Future-esque idea for Neom, one that includes flying cars, robot maids, and an artificial moon. It's got a full Truman Show. Yet the project managers are reluctant to say, you're deluded to the wealthiest and most powerful man/Nepo baby in a country that deals out death penalties quicker than Oprah gives away free cars. With all of that being said, the proposed deadlines and final results we were told to expect should be taken with a massive grain of salt. There are, however, projects that are far more grounded and realistic than building a city in the middle of nowhere. Since Vision 2030 aims to diversify Saudi Arabia's income, it was expected that a significant portion of the budget would go toward touristic projects. After all, Saudi Arabia is the most visited country in Western Asia, welcoming around 30 million visitors in 2024, a figure that earned it the 11th spot on the most visited countries in the world list. Yeah, but it's not for the It's because of Mecca. Just as a comment there, it's because of Mecca. Nevertheless, there remains ample room for expansion, with the Red Sea project standing out as by far the largest initiative. Developed by Tabuk-based Red Sea Global, this massive resort is projected to attract more than 1 million visitors annually once it opens. Located on the west coast, the resort will stretch along 200 kilometers of the Red Sea's coastline. In addition to endless beaches, reports indicate that the development will encompass a desert, mountains, a volcano, and 92 untouched islands. Of course, those islands won't remain untouched once development wraps up, but I mean, who cares about factual correctness when you can use sensationalism to attract visitors? Am I right? When completed, the resort is set to include 50 hotels with around 8,000 rooms, making it by far the largest resort in the world, snatching the title away from the First World Hotel and Plaza in Malaysia. This achievement would also turn Saudi Arabia into the country with 2 of the world's top 5 biggest resorts, the other being the Clock Towers complex. That complex deserves a video of its own, but in short, it boasts the largest clock tower in the world and ranks as the 2nd most expensive building ever constructed. And I'll give it to them. It looks f***ing impressive. Anyway, these 8,000 rooms will be scattered across 22 islands and 6 sites on the mainland. The largest of these islands, Shura Island, will be connected to the shore by a 1.2-kilometer-long bridge, making it Saudi Arabia's longest. It will also host a dozen international hotel chains. Another resort section called the Six Senses Southern Dunes will feature 40 villas hidden in the Al-Nasai Desert. Saudi Arabia's Granite Mountains will also accommodate villas and hotels as part of the Desert Rock section. The biggest challenge of this massive development is transportation. With locations so isolated from one another and many separated by sea, the critical question remains, how will this resort transport its guests? Look, Saudis don't shy away from massive projects, which is why they built an entire airport just to accommodate the Red Sea project. The Red Sea International Airport opened its tarmac in September 2023 and was specifically designed to serve amphibious seaplanes. In fact, one of its runways was designed for hydrogen-powered seaplanes that transport guests from the airport to the island where they're staying. Beyond these planes, the islands are only accessible by yachts, while the inland locations are integrated into Saudi Arabia's road network. All in all, the Red Sea project cost around $17 billion and is expected to contribute about $5 billion to Saudi Arabia's GDP annually. The 28,000 square kilometer resort, that's roughly the size of Hawaii, will create around 70,000 job opportunities and is expected to handle approximately 1 million tourists per annum. Apart from tourism, Vision 2030 also includes the development of a massive entertainment center. Located in Riyadh, Qiddiya is well on its way to becoming one of the largest entertainment destinations in the world. According to its developers, it's poised to become the biggest tourist destination worldwide, though that claim is, of course, oh so speculative. Qiddiya will feature 3 major components, the Qiddiya Speed Park being the most intriguing. The racing circuit is designed to allow drivers to reach speeds of over 325 km per hour and will include the world's first cantilevered track section, known as the Blade. Standing 70 meters above ground, the Blade is an engineering marvel. If the Speed Park succeeds in hosting its first Formula One race in 2027 as planned, it will mark the debut of the first elevated racetrack in F1 history. Gotta say, that's pretty cool. The track's design credits go to former F1 driver and 2-time 24 Hours of Le Mans winner Alex Wurz, along with the legendary Hermann Tilke. For those who may not be aware, Tilke is the designer behind Austria's A1 ring, as well as the circuits in Bahrain, Shanghai, Istanbul, Valencia, and many other renowned venues. The racetrack will wrap around and pass through some of Qiddiya's other attractions, offering visitors a unique opportunity to view the races. One of these attractions is the planned Six Flags Park. Currently under construction, it's set to become the Middle East's largest theme park at 79 acres. The park will feature the world's tallest drop tower ride and the world's fastest, tallest, and longest roller coaster ride, dubbed the Falcon's Flight. Again, that sounds pretty awesome, to be honest. The ride is expected to stretch more than 4 kilometers and reach a top speed of nearly 250 kilometers an hour. I want to go on that, but I probably can't go to Saudi Arabia anymore. At one point, the ride will even pass over the F1 racetrack, giving riders a thrilling glimpse of the race as they speed along at incredibly high speeds. On top of that, Qiddiya will include a Dragon Ball theme park, the world's only one. It will feature more than 30 attractions, with the most popular being the statue of Shenron, which is reportedly set to stand around 70 meters tall. In a world where dictators erect even larger monuments for themselves, who would have guessed that we'd see one inspired by a cartoon character? Unfortunately, as has become common with Vision 2030 projects, not everything is smooth sailing for Qiddiya, particularly with that racetrack. It was announced in 2020 that the inaugural Saudi Arabian Grand Prix would be held at this circuit in 2021. However, construction was unfinished, and the event instead took place at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. According to some reports, the Saudi government then paid tens of millions of dollars to retain hosting rights until the racetrack is completed, presumably in 2027. Because of this, both Saudi Arabia and F1 have found themselves at the center of a controversy, with hundreds of organizations accusing them of using sports to deflect attention from human rights violations, or, as some call it, sports washing. The racetrack's construction remains well underway, and according to the latest reports, it should be completed in time for the inaugural 2027 race. In addition to Qiddiya, Riyadh is also set to be home to 4 other megaprojects that are still under construction. Riyadh's Sports Boulevard, New Maraba, the Macabre, and the Mohammed bin Salman non-profit city are 4 megaprojects that will transform the capital's landscape entirely. The Saudis have an obsession with linear design. If the line isn't evidence enough, just take a look at Sports Boulevard. When finished, this linear park will extend an impressive 135 kilometers, connecting all parts of Riyadh and the Riyadh province. The park will feature cycling tracks throughout and approximately 123 kilometers of horse riding trails. If building one of the largest parks in the world wasn't enough, the development will also include a 130-meter-tall sports tower. With over 30 sports facilities spread across the 84,000 square meter tower, it will be, by far, the largest sports complex in the world. By its sheer size, the Sports Boulevard project ranks among the largest in the world. At this point, it's not far-fetched to assume that the list of the world's largest projects is predominantly composed of Saudi ventures. If one of the world's largest parks isn't enough, Riyadh is also constructing the world's largest downtown project. New Maraba would, however, be nothing without the Macabre, the 400-meter-tall cube-shaped skyscraper that's the world's second indoor city. By volume, the Macabre will become the world's largest building once it's fully completed. Although not much is known about the design, we do know that it is perfectly cubical and that it will take the title of the world's largest single-built structure, boasting around 2 million square meters of floor space. And just for reference, you could fit 20 Empire State Buildings in it. By floor space, that is. The final project in Riyadh is the Mohammed bin Salman non-profit city, the first of its kind in the world. First unveiled in 2021, the city features a technology and science center, a massive academic center, and an art gallery, among other attractions. Surprisingly, there has been no controversy regarding this development, whether from an engineering, human rights, or ecological standpoint. The creation of the world's longest park and largest building is well underway, and it appears that both will be finished by 2030. Once finalized, these projects should breathe some fresh air into the lungs of Saudi Arabia's capital. They are actually relatively tame compared to other Vision 2030 projects. There's no dredging of the seas or massive earth moving, and no overzealous design that defies the basic principles of architecture, common sense, and good taste. As a result, even their collective ambition does not come close to matching the plans for Jeddah Tower. The building piercing the skies. That's what they called Jeddah Tower when the project was first announced in 2010, long before Vision 2030 was even created. However, the construction of the tower took so long that it was eventually incorporated into the plans as part of the Jeddah Economic City project. In fact, once finalized, Jeddah Tower will become the city's centerpiece. If we take a trip back in time to 2010, we can witness the day when the Jeddah Economic Company, the developer of the modern-day Tower of Babel, appointed Adrian Smith to design it. Although the initial plan was to construct a building precisely 1 mile or 1.6 kilometers in height, soil testing revealed that this was impossible. The developers ended up having to settle for a building that's barely a kilometer long, which is an embarrassment. Right? This structure would not only claim the title of the tallest building on the planet, but also become the tallest man-made structure in history. Once completed, it will soar at least 180 meters above the Burj Khalifa, and it will stand at over 3 times the height of the Eiffel Tower, and even be visible from another zip code, at least when the skies are clear, so the developers should be thankful they aren't building in England. In 2011, reports stated that the design had been finalized and approved. The actual height of the tower, however, will only be revealed once the building is finalized, although one thing is certain, it will be at least a kilometer tall. Skyscraper developers are obsessed with the height of their buildings. You could say they engage in a sort of building measuring contest. They also have a knack for keeping the true height of their structures hidden until completion. For example, during New York's World's Tallest Building competition, the Chrysler Building's architect, William Van Allen, had a 38-meter-long spire secretly built inside the frame of the building. The spire was constructed in absolute secrecy, with no media reporting on it, and it was only installed once the rest of the building was finished around it. The true height of the Chrysler Building wasn't officially known until it was unveiled. In a similar way, we won't truly know the height of the Jeddah Tower until the design is finalized. What we do know is that the building will weigh over 900,000 tons. For comparison, the Burj Khalifa, the world's current tallest building, has a weight of only half that. To allow visitors to scale the tallest building, there will be a total of 59 elevators operating at speeds of up to 36 kilometers an hour. Since an elevator can't cover a full kilometer from the ground floor to the top, the design also includes 3 sky lobbies designed for elevator transfers. Guests will use these elevators to access the highest observation deck in the world. Located in the top third of the building, this deck will provide visitors with some incredible views. However, it will be at least a few years before we can properly analyze this architectural monstrosity. Ever since its inception, the Jeddah Tower project has encountered delay after delay. I'm actually kind of down with this one. I like tall buildings. I don't think this will be a monstrosity. I think it'll be cool. Construction officially began on the 1st of April 2013. Although the project was initially scheduled for completion within 5 years, the building remains far from finished. The delay is entirely due to political reasons. 2 major investors, the owner of Kingdom Holding, which owns 1/3 of the tower, and the chairman of the Saudi Bin Laden Group, which owns 17%, were both arrested during the 2017 Saudi purges. In short, these purges were carried out under the guise of fighting corruption, though the validity of that claim remains unproven. The result was widespread detention of royals, politicians, military officers, scholars, and businessmen, along with the centralization of political and financial power in the hands of Mohammed bin Salman. At the time of the purges, construction was only about a quarter finished, and work came to a halt due to labor issues with the contractor following the arrest. Then, after work had just begun to resume, the COVID-19 pandemic struck in 2020, bringing the entire project to an almost complete standstill. It would take until 2023 for the project to restart with new contractors, and work only resumed very recently in January 2025. By June of that year, the tower had already reached the 70th floor. After years of designs, redesigns, delays, and disputes, it appears that Jeddah Tower is finally on track to fulfill its destiny and become the world's tallest building. Once completed, potentially an entire decade behind schedule, it will stand at the forefront of Jeddah Economic City, also known as Kingdom City. Some experts believe that with its simplistic design, the tower could truly evolve into a self-sustainable entity closely resembling the concept of a vertical city. Moreover, given the critical shortage of real estate in Saudi Arabia, the development surrounding the tower is expected to provide a significant boost to the area, meeting the demands of a rapidly growing population. In stark contrast to the futuristic Jeddah Tower, Diriyah Gate is the world's largest cultural preservation project. Located just 15 minutes from Riyadh, the former capital of the Emirate of Diriyah, which was the first Saudi state, the site now lies at the heart of an initiative designed to preserve the renowned UNESCO location for generations to come. Although the historic district remains well maintained, much was lost during the siege of Diriyah in 1818. This project aims to eternalize what has been preserved and to meticulously rebuild what was lost. By doing so, visitors to Diriyah will feel as though they have stepped into a time capsule, experiencing firsthand what life was like in the city centuries ago. The overall vision for the project integrates urban development with cultural and recreational facilities, with a particular focus on At Taref. At Taref, the historic district of Diriyah, is widely regarded as one of the most important historical sites in the entire country. As part of the plan, the district will be restored, its archaeological sites will be documented, and then it will be transformed into an open museum. However, the stunning ancient architecture won't be the only draw, as the King Salman University and the House of Saud Museum will also be incorporated into the district. Additionally, the developers plan to build a traditional Taref market to enhance the overall experience. To ensure an authentic experience, designers have divided Diriyah into 3 sections. Everything mentioned so far falls within section D1, a section devoted to history. All 3 sections will be connected by the Wadi Hanafa, which is another major component of the project. This seasonal river once played a massive role in the lives of locals, with farms depending on it for survival. The Diriyah Gate project aims to revive the river by adding walking tracks and gathering areas, alongside discussions about developing farms and palm groves. The palm groves, in fact, represent a significant portion of the project. The plan is to plant hundreds of thousands of trees native to Wadi Hanafa, which have been gradually eradicated from the area over time. To accommodate millions of guests each year, the project also includes a monstrously large underground car park. According to some sources, it will have the capacity for 10,500 vehicles, potentially making it the largest underground parking garage in the world. Kind of a mega project all its own, isn't it? The car park will be situated just beneath Diriyah Square, stretching over nearly 1 million square meters across 3 levels, effectively making it larger than Diriyah itself. Now, real estate developments have been greenlit and will be part of Diriyah sections D2 and D3. It's a challenge to introduce new real estate so near an ancient site, but the projects are expected to blend traditional Najdi styles with modern urbanism. The design is reportedly similar to Parisian developments featuring 5-floor buildings with courtyards. In fact, the designers embraced this Parisian influence so much that Diriyah will boast a main boulevard reminiscent of the Champs-Élysées. Which sounds nice. Section D3 will merge with the city of Riyadh and is set to become a completely modern area from an architectural standpoint. Once completed, Diriyah will be connected to Riyadh, the modern center of the kingdom that is deeply tied to its historical identity. It's anticipated that Diriyah will emerge as one of Saudi Arabia's primary tourist attractions, potentially even surpassing the Red Sea resort in popularity, with planners expecting 50 million visits by 2030. Additionally, with the creation of 200,000 new jobs and the addition of about 100,000 residents, Diriyah is poised to offer a strong solution for financial diversification and to address Saudi Arabia's real estate challenges. Jesus Christ. These guys do mega projects like I do YouTube channels. Holy shit, you got enough? One of the few Vision 2030 projects that was actually successfully completed so far is the Riyadh Metro. Although ground was broken in 2014, the 176-kilometer transport system wasn't finalized until 2024, once again due to the Saudi purges and the COVID-19 pandemic. Once finalized, however, it more than proved its worth. The metro consists of 6 lines and integrates an 85-kilometer bus network as well. It is by far the world's longest driverless metro, covering the entire area of Riyadh and, quite frankly, doing a fantastic job of fighting pollution. According to some calculations, the metro is reducing the number of car trips by nearly 250,000 a day. This translates to about 3.6 million passengers daily and cuts fuel consumption by approximately 400,000 liters a day. To paint a better picture, the average car in the United States burns through about 1,800 litres of gas every year. The metro will ensure that 222 times more than that is saved every day. Maybe even more impressively, all of the metro stations, some of which are true architectural beauties, are saving energy in remarkably high numbers. For example, 33% of the West Train depot's power comes from solar energy, and about a fifth of all the materials used in constructing the metro are recycled. The trains themselves take advantage of advanced power-saving technologies. For one, they use a regenerative braking system to slow down. This technology converts the train's kinetic energy into electricity and reroutes it to the supply network, effectively saving energy during braking. I mean, it would be fancy if my car didn't do that. Additionally, the entire metro line, including the depots, is partially powered by solar energy, with panels that generate enough electricity each day to power 15,000 homes. That's pretty impressive. Another significant benefit of the metro is the relief it provides for traffic. Riyadh is an incredibly fast-growing city. Currently, its population ranges between 7 and 8 million, but just 20 years ago it was barely 4 million, and 20 years before that it wasn't even a million. If all goes according to Vision 2030's plan, Riyadh will reach 15 million citizens in less than 5 years. The rapidly growing population means more vehicles, which in turn leads to more daily trips that the city's roads simply couldn't handle before the metro was introduced. In 2018, Riyadh saw almost 9 million car trips every single day. For comparison, London, despite being slightly larger in population, has fewer than 5 million car trips a day. With traffic jams occurring as commonly in Riyadh as rain in Scotland, the metro was desperately needed to alleviate the congestion. With nearly 4 million passengers opting for the metro every day instead of driving, Riyadh's roads have become noticeably less congested. At peak hours, a train arrives at each station every 150 seconds, and under normal conditions, one can travel from the north to the south end of the city in under an hour. This is comparable to London, whose size closely mirrors that of Riyadh, where journeys on the tube from north to south can take anywhere from half an hour to an hour. The developers moved almost 19 million cubic meters of soil, which is the equivalent to shifting more than 6 of Giza's Great Pyramids. In addition, 13,000 meters of electric cables were installed, a length just slightly greater than the Earth's diameter, and with over 2 million square meters of roadworks, the team effectively paved an area the size of Monaco. This impressive project may soon acquire another dimension. The head of Riyadh Metro stated that there are concrete plans for an expansion. The proposed 7th line would connect King Khalid Airport with Qiddiya, New Maraba, Diriyah, and King Abdullah Gardens, linking several of Vision 2030's projects. And speaking of King Abdullah Gardens, this project is, along with Jeddah Tower and the Riyadh Metro, one of 3 ventures that were planned long before Vision 2030. However, given its lengthy development process, the project was eventually incorporated into the Megaproject cluster. Qiddiya, as it's often called, is set to become one of the world's largest botanic gardens once completed. Truly an oasis in the midst of Saudi Arabia's arid central region, the gardens will span 210 hectares, making it the largest temperature-controlled garden in the world. The core idea behind Qiddiya is to take a journey back in time to an era when the area was rich with life. Beyond its symbolic significance, the gardens are poised to be a world-leading center for climate change study. At the heart of the gardens lie 2 10-hectare crescents, which will feature a 400-million-year-old recreation of the evolution of plant life on Earth. A dedicated section of the gardens, known as the Garden of Choices, will depict how nature could appear in the future if radical climate change is not halted. A somewhat ironic concept, given that Saudi Arabia ranks among the world's 10 largest per capita greenhouse gas emitters. Like many other Vision 2030 projects, this endeavor did not proceed as planned. Although it was slated to open in 2023, delays caused by poor organization have left the project incomplete at the time of this video being recorded. Nevertheless, the gardens are aiming for a formal opening this autumn. So you got that to look forward to, don't you? Saudi Arabia is investing billions of dollars into several large-scale energy projects, the largest of which is the King Salman Energy Park. Developers describe this megaproject as an industrial ecosystem that will offer a range of services to the energy industry, including production, refining, drilling, and water treatment. Spark, as they call it, is expected to create an additional 100,000 jobs and boost GDP by around $6 billion annually. However, it's far from the only initiative in this sector. The Al-Kafshi desalination plant is another impressive endeavor and was, in fact, one of the first Vision 2030 projects to be completed. Formally launched in 2018, this facility is recognized as the world's largest solar desalination plant. The plant has the capacity to produce up to 90,000 cubic meters of clean water per day, enough to easily meet the water needs of 80,000 average American households. By relying on solar power, the plant has achieved a reduction of 14,000 tons in carbon dioxide emissions and saved 16,000 barrels of crude oil consumption. Similarly, the Rabi desalination plant stands out as a major project and is actually the second most expansive energy project under Vision 2030. This facility, like its counterpart, focuses on minimizing its carbon footprint by utilizing crystalline absorption cooling technology. This innovative method not only enhances process efficiency, but also reduces negative environmental impacts. Unlike the Al-Kafji plant, the Rabi plant also produces salt. It generates around 700 kilograms of salt and 5,000 cubic meters of water every day, all while consuming relatively little thermal and electrical energy. Although it is not as green as Al-Kafji, the Rabi plant stands as a leading example of the simultaneous production of salt and drinkable water. And for our next example, we return to Neom, the host city of the Middle East's largest solar panel factory. Launched in 2021, this nearly $200 million solar panel factory spans 27,000 square meters. That's about 3 times the size of a Manhattan city block. In addition to producing solar panels, it is the first Saudi laboratory for testing solar panels, and the panels manufactured there are used at the Al-Kafij desalination plant. There's also the Sakaka solar power plant, which features more than 1.2 million solar panels and lowers energy costs by selling electricity at 2.3 cents per kilowatt hour. Since Saudi, Jesus Christ, that's cheap. Oh my lord! Since Saudi Arabia enjoys abundant sunshine, Sakaka produces 930 gigawatt hours of electrical power while reducing carbon emissions by approximately 530,000 tons annually. Being the force that it is, Saudi Arabia naturally became interested in nuclear power and built the Low-Power Research Reactor. Although the country's first nuclear reactor is primarily intended for research and education, it has still attracted significant negative attention from the international community. Saudi Arabia refused to accept a strict inspection regime, one to be conducted by international experts, and things got a little heated between them and the rest of the world. At this time, Saudi Arabia does not have a nuclear power plant. However, the research reactor represents a major stepping stone toward building one. Given that the country isn't exactly renowned for its adherence to international laws and restrictions, experts fear that constructing a nuclear power plant without proper oversight could lead to disaster. And the final project worth mentioning is the Damat al-Jandal wind farm. One of the largest wind farms in the Middle East, it is capable of generating enough electricity to power 70,000 Saudi homes and save around 1 million tons of carbon dioxide annually. Located approximately 900 kilometers north of Riyadh, the wind farm features 99 Dutch Vestas units, a key contributor to one of Vision 2030's main goals, sourcing half the nation's power from renewable energy. The Saudis cheered when their country was chosen as the host for World Expo 2030, beating South Korea and Italy to the title by a considerable margin. Saudi Arabia hopes to use this global showcase event to demonstrate the success of Project Vision 2030, and nothing would encapsulate that success quite like a remarkable expo site. Development's currently underway for what is expected to become the largest World Expo site ever. However, almost everything about the project remains shrouded in secrecy in order to truly astonish the world. We do know, however, is that the expo site itself covers 6.6 square kilometers, significantly larger than Shanghai's 2010 expo site, which will lose its title as the largest expo ever after 20 years. We also know that at least 197 countries have confirmed their participation, with each country having its own pavilion. Well, almost every country. Croatia has 3 of them, and Gabon has 2 pavilions in the official brochure for some reason. Returning to the topic at hand, the expo opens on October 1st, 2030, and closes on March 31st the following year. The largest expo of all time will also be the most expensive in terms of energy expenditure. To power this massive gathering of nations, the expo relies on solar power. As part of Vision 2030, Saudi Arabia aims to generate half of all of its electricity from solar energy, and all of that power will be dedicated to the expo. The budget of $7.8 billion makes the expo the second most expensive of all time. The one in Shanghai actually cost 6 times that. However, this meeting is more than just a World Expo. It is a prime opportunity for Saudi Arabia to showcase the successes of Vision 2030, provided that they actually reach all the targets that they've set for themselves, which is a large provided. Other than that, we don't know much about what this expo will feature. As mentioned earlier, everything is being kept very hush-hush, and most details about the gathering and its accompanying events will be revealed in a few years. So in conclusion, we're left with some of the smaller projects that form part of Vision 2030. While these initiatives are interesting, they cannot compare to the sheer size and ambition of the projects that we've discussed so far over the last 40-some minutes. Saudi Arabia's got a lot going on. One of the more interesting projects is The Rig. This concept features a theme park constructed on an offshore oil platform located about 40 kilometers out in the Persian Gulf. It promises to be a one-of-a-kind attraction that is predicted to draw nearly 1 million guests by the year 2032, cleverly nodding to Saudi Arabia's historical dependence on oil. New housing developments also form a key part of the overall plan. Several prominent real estate developers are busy constructing vast neighborhoods with projects like Jeddah in Riyadh aimed at addressing Saudi Arabia's housing challenges. Where completed, these developments will provide hundreds of thousands of housing units for sale. Additionally, a major redevelopment project is underway in Mecca, centered around Masar. This 3.65-kilometer-long cluster of mixed-use buildings is set to completely revamp the ancient city, once again showcasing the Saudis' fondness for linear design. Al-Ula Vision and Sudar Peaks projects are well underway to eternalize and promote culture. Al-Ula, a city rich with ancient sites, is set to become a hotspot for lovers of history, while the project will also focus on the revitalization of the critically endangered Arabian leopard. The Sudar Peaks project, aimed at mountain tourism, is expected to draw millions of visitors to Saudi Arabia's highest peak in the Asir province. And finally, it's important to mention the Islamic Civilization Village project in Medina, which seeks to promote Islamic culture and present its heritage to the rest of the world. In 2016, when Vision 2030 was announced, the country communicated to the entire world that it was dead set on earning a seat at the high-end, luxurious table alongside the world's elite. Announcing this ambition before 8 billion people was a monumental PR gamble, with the reputation of the entire nation riding on the successful delivery of the project. Now, after this somewhat painfully long deep dive into Vision 2030, one question begs for an answer. Will the project succeed or fail? Well, anyone telling you that they know anything with absolute certainty, they're lying. What can be said with certainty, though, is that for the moment, Vision 2030 is not quite on the right path. It'd be incorrect to assert that it's definitely going to achieve all of its goals. Among the 4 truly monumental projects, Neom, Qiddiya, Jeddah Tower, and the Riyadh Metro, only one has been successful, and even the Metro's launch was behind schedule. A significant amount of time was lost during the COVID-19 pandemic, a circumstance for which Saudi Arabia cannot be blamed. However, the country can be held accountable for further slowing progress with the Saudi purges. Additionally, some ideas behind the projects were wildly unrealistic. The Crown Prince, for example, made his bed when he announced that Neom would have flying cars and an artificial moon, leaving him to deal with the inevitable consequences of that statement. As the actual development of the plans began, it became clear that more often than not, these projects were nothing more than dreams fueled by vanity. They were all style and very little substance. Sure, some of these gigaprojects like Riyadh Metro, the energy projects, and Diriyah Gate are smart, feasible, and planned with the engineer's heart in the right place. Most, however, give the impression of a new, shiny toy that the rich kid in class uses to impress his peers. The toy may be cool now, but soon it will lose its shine and become obsolete, teaching the kid that there's more to friendship and social hierarchy than mere linear neocities. It seems that despite the original aim of improving the country's image, a covert goal of Vision 2030, the project has garnered only negative press. Hundreds of journalists, world leaders, activists, and managers of major organizations have criticized Saudi Arabia's ambitions. Some accuse the country of focusing on high-tech projects in an effort to make everyone forget its terrible human rights record. Others highlight the irony of the absurd amount of carbon that Saudi Arabia will release to build plants which, over time, are meant to lower the country's carbon footprint. Human rights activists continue to remind us about the dozens of assassinations, the ones we know of, that the country is committed to secure its political and financial goals. Everyone seems to be asking the same question. How will it end? How many more assassinations, deaths, and human rights violations will the world witness as a wealthy country makes a petty attempt to improve its reputation? Well, that question we can't answer. What can be said, though, is that not all of Vision 2030 is a failure. Some of its biggest projects will undoubtedly check that box, and while the successful ones may not rebrand the country completely, it would be untrue to say that the project has failed in its entirety. The energy and sustainability projects, they're running well. The capital's traffic network has finally received much-needed relief. And by the look of it, the 2030 World Expo might be the most impressive one yet. But when you draw the line, will Saudi Arabia's economy, social structure, and culture ever reached the levels of diversification that they aimed for? Well, most likely not. Neom and the line will most likely never reach full capacity. The world's elites, who are the ones able to afford the newly built luxurious resorts, will probably grow tired of them soon, and Jeddah Tower, while certainly an impressive feat of engineering, probably won't spearhead the kind of economic and demographic boom expected in the city of Jeddah. Can you really call that a success? After investing about $1.3 trillion and likely doubling that figure by the time all the projects finalized, after telling literally the entire world that everything would be completed by 2030, and after spending years claiming that these projects would transform your country into one of the most developed and sought-after places on the globe, well, no, that doesn't sound like a success, does it? While it won't go down in history as a total failure, Vision 2030 will most likely be remembered as an overwrought development plan that was too ambitious for its own good. A plan that never really had a chance from the start. Thank you for watching.